welcome to another Design Clips here at W+9. This is Dawn. In today's video, we're going to be creating this set of cards. We're going to be creating 6 using one basic design, and all of them feature our new butterfly mandala stamps and dies. This is a collaboration set between myself and Stephanie Lowe Creative, and it is gorgeous. Now, this is a large 6x8 stamp set, and like I said, this features this large mandala made out of different leaves and butterflies. There's also a large hello sentiment in here where you can do the outline and then fill it in, and there's also some sub-sentiments as well. There is a matching companion die to go with this, and it's actually got 3 levels to cut out of the mandala, but we're only going to be using 2 today, so we're going to be using the largest and then the second largest, along with some color blending and some Embossed Resist. I've cut some panels of our W+9 white cardstock down to 4 1/4 by 5 1/2 inches, and now I'm treating it with the anti-static tool. I'm going to ink my stamp up with Versamark ink, and since I'm using this large Fiskars stamp press, I like to hold it in my hand when applying the ink. Because this is such a large area, it can bow in the middle if you have it laying flat on your desk and you're inking it with the ink pad. Holding it in my hand gives some pressure behind it and ensures that the entire stamp is making good direct contact with the ink pad and giving me even coverage. So I've centered this, and now I'm pressing down and making sure that I'm getting a good impression, and then I'm going to cover it with some white embossing powder. I'm going to knock off the excess, and then I'm going to use my heat tool to melt the powder. Now, because this is such a large stamp and I'm embossing a large area, I did heat up my heat gun about 15 seconds before bringing it over to the paper. This just means that I will have to apply heat to the paper for less time, which will give me less warping. Now that that's all heat embossed, we can do the Embossed Resist technique. And I'm going to do that by sponging over our Pure Color dye ink. This first color I'm using is the Flamingo, and I'm going to pair that with our Miami Spice. These two come in our South Beach collection, and it's a gorgeous color combo. It's one of my favorite. So I'm using a round ink blending tool, and I like to get the sponge applicator good and saturated with ink. I don't want so much that I'm going to create spots when I hit the paper, but I want to make sure that that sponge is, I like to call it seasoned. So it's got a good amount of ink already in it. This is going to make my blending easier and quicker. Now for this first layer, I'm not worried about getting the color on too dark. Basically, I just want to get a nice, even light coverage. I'm not pushing down really hard. I'm actually holding the ink tool around the sides there, not pushing hardly at all in a downward direction. More just setting the pad on there and then going around in circular light motions. And again, I'm not worried about getting the color too dark on the first pass because I'm actually going to go over this twice. I'm going to do the first layer, just making sure that I get a pretty even coverage. And then I'll come back through and go over it a second time, and that's where I'll deepen up the color. This just helps me to make sure that I get the most even coverage with none of those sponge marks that you can sometimes get when you're blending inks. So now I'm coming through to do that second layer, and you'll see now that color will start to deepen up some. But I still won't get any of those weird round sponge marks. If you guys have ink blended, you know exactly what I'm talking about. So once I've got a nice even coverage and I've got it to the depth of color that I want, I'm going to come in with a clean soft cloth. I say clean very loosely here. This is like my old white t-shirt. I love using an old white cotton like Cane's t-shirt to clean up. It works. It's like the multi-tool for me. So I just rub over it to get any excess ink that's sitting on top of the embossing off and turn it white again, and then we're good to go. Now I mentioned I'd be pairing this with our Miami Spice, so I've gone ahead and ink blended another panel off camera. No reason for you guys to watch me do that twice. And now we're ready to do our die cutting. So I'm going to line up the dies like so, and then I am going to run them through my Big Shot. And again, I'm going to do that off camera, and when we're done, we will have 4 pieces that we can then swap and create these color blocked mandalas. I'll put these off to the side, and now we can start working on that sentiment. Now, like I mentioned, there's a large hello in this set, and it's got the outlined image and then the solid inside image. I'm I'm going to be stamping in the same two colors, that Flamingo and Miami Spice. And I'm going to start by stamping the Hello outline in our Flamingo. Now I'm using the Misty here, but if you don't have a Misty, an acrylic block would work just fine. These are really easy to line up. In fact, sometimes I like to offset it on purpose. So again, if you don't have a Misty, the acrylic block will work just fine. So I'm going to go ahead and stamp this out. And it looks like I did not ink up the top of that H, so again, another plus of having the Misty, I can just re-ink and restamp, and I'm good to go. So then I'm going to line up the inside solid stamp there, pick that up on my Misty door, ink that up with the Miami Spice, and then stamp that down as well. Now I mentioned I like to offset it, so that's what I've done here. But again, that's personal preference, and if you're using the Misty, you can make sure that you have it perfectly aligned. Now I did just want to point out really quick, we've mentioned that our inks dry back a little bit lighter, and you can really see it right here, how there's still moisture on the paper where we've just stamped, so those colors look a little bit darker and deeper, but as that moisture evaporates, the colors lighten up to their true color, and you can really see the difference here. I went ahead and stamped one of the sub-sentiments, the friend down there at the bottom, and now we're going to use the coordinating die that's also included in the set to die cut our large hello greeting. To trim out the friend, I'm going to make a little label out of it, so I'm using the Tonic Mini Guillotine Trimmer here, and I'll just trim that down. And then I can apply that to the front of the card as well. I wanted to add a little more dimension, so I want to pop up those medallions, so I've gone ahead and cut 2 more, and this time I've just used that large outer ring, and I didn't die cut the middle portion out because I'm going to pop the entire mandala up. I'm using a little bit of the glue tube from Lawn Fawn, and I'm going to adhere these one on top of another, and then I'm going to go ahead and use that same adhesive and adhere the ink blended mandala on top of this. So this is just going to give it a little bit of a higher profile to stand up off the base of the card. Just lining up that outer ring, and then I'm going to go ahead and do the exact same thing with that inner one. And they're just going to fit into each other just like a puzzle piece. And then once I've got those all adhered into place, I'm just going to take a large pair of scissors and trim off any of the excess, because this mandala is bigger than a standard A2 card base. And same as before, I'll just repeat with that same liquid adhesive to adhere the mandala to the card front, and then I'll use some 3M adhesive to adhere the sentiments to the front of the mandala. I really loved the way this design looked. I loved the way it turned out. So I had fun making several cards using some different color combos. Now for this one, remember we have those 2 extra pieces left over. So I did go ahead and make another version of this card. Here are all of the cards that I ended up making. So this is the Flamingo and Miami Spice. And you can see here, this one I did on a white card base. I used the large hello and the friend. Here's the dimension where we stacked up that mandala. And then with the leftover mandala pieces, I created another version, and this one I put on our Nautical Navy cardstock. I did it in a landscape instead of portrait. And then for the large hello, I just white heat embossed it onto the Nautical Navy cardstock and die cut it out. Left it without a sub-sentiment. I really like the different look that that same design gives. Here I used our Falling for Blue and our Last Leaf, and again I did the same treatment using both the outlined hello and then the solid fill stamp, again using that Last Leaf and Falling for Blue. For the other one, I put it onto our craft cardstock and again die cut that white heat embossed hello from our craft cardstock. And finally, I wanted to show you how versatile this set can be. You don't have to buy stamp sets just for the holidays. If you look at your stash, I bet you have some that could work for Christmas as well. So here I've paired up our Cranberry Crush and our Warm Wool ink. And then I've added our Christmas tag die. Here I die cut the Christmas from that and then paired that with our Be Merry Sentiments stamp set. So here I'm able to really stretch this design and take something that can be used all year round, literally, and used it for a holiday design. For these ones, instead of popping up the entire mandala, I just used the center portion of that mandala and popped that area up. And then adhered that Merry label there directly to that. And then I added a little bit of the rock glitter to the Christmas die cut here. For the other, I again just popped up that center area of the mandala, stamped out the Merry Wishes onto that little banner there, and then adhered that directly to the center as well. I really love how all of these turned out, and I have a very hard time picking my favorite. Usually I have a pretty clear idea of which one's my favorite. Here, I just don't know. I really like them on the colored cardstock, but then again, I really like the contrast and the two colored sentiments there on the ones on the white. And then I love the warm wool with that cranberry crush, so I don't know. Let me know in the comments below which one is your favorite. I want to thank you guys so much for watching. I hope you enjoyed today's video. Remember, if you want to find out more about any of the products featured, you can find all of the links in the description box below. If you want to find out more about any of the featured W+9 products, you can find them at w+9.com as well as at many of your favorite retailers. Again, thank you guys so much for watching, and I will see you next time. Bye!